even our relationship. That idea of trying to be better at being better. I feel like that is something that we've really embraced as a couple. I think marriage isn't always easy.
No. Welcome back to In Residence. I'm Keith.
And I'm Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Keith.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. What's going on today?
What's going on? Well, yesterday we were talking. I really enjoy our Saturday mornings because we get to have some time together over coffee, just talking about what's going on or what we've been reading or listening to, what things we've been noticing throughout the week. And you shared a blog post with me from Seth Godin that was really interesting. And we thought maybe that is something we could dig into a little more through conversation on the pod.
Yeah. So Seth's blog, right? I try to look at it every day. I have it in my RSS feed, which I should show you how to set that up. It's a great app that I heard from Seth, Feedly. So you can create your own feed of things you want to follow. So anyway,
feel free to help me.
Little side recommendation.
I kind of outsource all my tech to you. So
yeah. So
if you think it would be helpful, let's do it.
I was catching up on Seth's blog the other day. And so from December 12th, 2024, depending on when anyone's listening to this, that's where you'll find it. The title is Better at Being Better. And that alone, I'm like, oh, that's all I'm trying to do all the time. Right? So I don't need to read the whole thing. But the thing that stood out to me that I shared with you, obviously you read the blog, but
yeah.
Seth says, what truly changes the game is when an organization decides to commit to being better at being better. And so I take that, and I'm not necessarily thinking of an organization. I'm thinking of myself and my life and what I'm trying to do. It really stood out to me. And like when you ask me, like, oh, what have you been doing this week or what stood out to you? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. So stuff like this, it stands out to me that I take it and I save it to like my notes app.
Mm-hmm.
I try to do that because I will forget. And it's just, anyway, that's just an aside of a reminder of it's good for me to write things down.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember.
I've been using my notes app a lot, even for, and I know I'm going on a tangent here, but even for our collaboration around the holiday of like who has what gifts for who.
Yeah.
I mean, that's worked actually pretty nice because then regardless if it's coming from you or from me, who's doing the wrapping, we know what belongs in what bucket.
Yeah, I don't have to find you and ask you, like, who's this for again? Who's this for?
Yep.
Wait, who's this for?
Where's this from?
You're like, I wrote it down on a piece of paper. I'm like, I don't have that piece of paper.
Yep. So I think moving forward, we're doing this.
Quick little tip too.
Yeah.
I mean, we have Apple phones.
We do. Yeah.
The share sheet button, you know?
Yeah.
So like if I'm on like a website or a blog post, if I go to share, copy the link, there's also a feature where it sends it directly to a new note.
Oh.
And so that's a game changer and so instead of me copying the URL, opening the notes app, creating a new note, pasting it in, I'm like, oh, I can do this in 1 or 2 clicks or taps, right, on my phone. So anyway, rambling, back to the blog.
Yeah.
Better at being better.
Yeah.
So what do you think about or what comes to mind with that?
Yeah. Well, at first, when I read through it and you were talking about it, better at being better, I really like it, but it takes me a while to get my head around. What does that actually mean? Because I know what trying to be better is.
It's subjective, right?
Right. But what does it mean to be better at being better?
Yeah. And who's better are you holding yourself to?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was also interested in the idea of the race to the bottom. And I think I understand it. But I was trying to figure out how do you translate that into personal work, that things that we're doing individually, projects, and not at an organizational level. And so those were 2 things that I'd be interested to talk about, to try and decipher between the 2 a little bit more clearly for me.
Yeah. So like the race to the bottom, that's come up from different people. Seth talks about the race to the bottom and people cutting costs, cutting investments in people, like in businesses, that ultimately undercuts your effectiveness at delivering the product or the change you're seeking to deliver, right? Because somebody can always lower their price. And so eventually everyone's lowering their price. And if you're lowering your price, it means you have less revenue to work with, right?
Yeah.
For me to take that and translate that to, say, my daily life, it's like, okay, where am I cutting corners,
Mm.
looking for shortcuts that in the long run, Seth said this somewhere, he's like, shortcuts aren't. And I'm like, oh yeah. See, I can fall into the trap of not taking a shortcut and then never getting anywhere.
Right.
But if I take it as like, okay, this is a process, and if I stick to it and I work the process, I will get to the finish line. But if I try to like game the system and take a shortcut, I'm going to end off way out in the weeds, and it's going to take me twice as long, kind of thing. So that comes back to, don't cut the corners. So like in my daily life, it's going to snowball into maybe undercutting my morals or my ethics or something, something like that. You know what I mean? Like, just slowly over time,
Yeah.
I'm going to maybe lose part of something that I think is a part of me, which is like, I'm diligent. I have attention to detail. I take pride in my work. I want to do a good job. I want all those things like that. That's what comes up when like race to the bottom. I maybe end up not being proud of things that I've done or produced,
Right. So I hear you. I'm wondering, how does race to the bottom connect to finding efficiencies? The example that I'm thinking about, or the project right now, is every year we do gingerbread house making. And so last weekend we did gingerbread house making.
Yeah.
And one of the things, there is this art between being patient for the royal icing to set up before you start putting walls up and gluing them together with the icing, right?
Yeah. So it
it's
doesn't fall.
structurally sound, so
Yeah.
it doesn't fall.
Yeah.
But there are things that you can possibly do to be more efficient than maybe there isn't a connection now that I'm saying it that way. Because if you were to cut corners in that, it could still produce, but you might not be super excited. So I'll use an example of myself in years past.
Mm-hmm.
I don't always have the patience to do the wall all, let it dry for about an hour or two and then do the other one. Like, I really want it up, so I often will try and figure out a design. Maybe this is me doing better. It's coming up with a design that matches my work style. But in the past, I have put things up and it's ended up being, okay, I'm now putting walls inside of a wall to try and hold up the wall I didn't have patience for it to grow.
Or a can of soup.
Or a can of soup, right?
Yeah.
And it's just going to be inside that gingerbread house for a long time. I guess maybe that's just making that point. If you're cutting corners, I wasn't always proud of when I had a house where it was sagging and caving in on one side.
And I'm the opposite, where I sit and I ideate and I think about how am I going to create the scaffolding so that I don't have it falling over while I'm working on another part, like I've seen happen to you. Like,
right.
You've got two walls up, you're putting up the third, and the first wall falls down. And
I just add more frosting.
Yeah, and then you roll with that. But me, I kind of get a little exasperated, and I feel that failure hard if something like that happens to me.
Yes.
So this year, for example, like let's just go with this.
We can do that. Yeah.
Everybody was starting and working on theirs, and I was sitting there not knowing what I was going to make. And I like to be creative, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel a little bit of pressure of, I want to be original, I want to be unique, I want to do something I haven't already done. I don't want to just do another house
out
of graham crackers, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of want to unpack this a little bit, because you gave me a suggestion of like, oh, you should do your studio. I have all these bookcases. Like, if anyone's been on a Zoom with me, you see my background. It's just these bookcases. I got Christmas lights. I have my guitars hanging up on one wall that I think you can see sometimes. And I was like, that's a really good idea. And I was kind of stubbornly upset that I didn't think of it.
Oh, really?
A little bit.
Oh.
Like, after I didn't realize that at first, but I realized like, oh, after you gave me that suggestion, I didn't start that idea. I was like, maybe, I don't know. I was kind of like a little teenager in a way, because I wanted to come up with the idea.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's something there with why. Laura had a good idea. Why can't I run with it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's something there I don't know. And like, we don't need to psychoanalyze it, but you bringing that up just made me realize. So I sit there and I ponder and I want to have this great, brilliant idea. And then you're just like, I'm building the structure as I go. And meanwhile, like I did do like these two walls of my studio, like kind of like a diorama, right?
Yeah, it turned out
And I
really
created
neat.
my bookcases. And so I'm sitting there like basically making bookcases out of graham crackers like I would in a cabinet shop, you know, and like using the shelves to measure the spaces, and I'm like moving them and letting it sit. It's laying down, and like I have nothing built, and you're over there building up, you know, and my mom's is, I don't know, like
It was a
4
mansion.
graham crackers tall.
It was so tall.
I'm like, oh my goodness. So anyway, it's an interesting thing when my brain butts up against the process and I kind of get in my own way.
Yeah. And
I think that was a situation where I had to get out of my own way and be like, no, like I don't have an idea. Am I really just going to sit here until I think my idea is good enough? Like Laura had a great idea for me to do something, and it's creative. And I, you know, it's not like I was doing paint by numbers and you were telling me exactly what to do. It's like you gave me a little spark, and it helped anyway.
No, it makes me think a little bit of the book Steal Like an Artist. A little, where it's kind of getting comfortable with not every idea is original, but you make it yours.
Yeah. And so right, like we reread that, and I know that, and maybe that's why that's in my head, and me being a little frustrated with myself is that I don't know, not disappointed in myself, but knowing like when somebody says like, hey, nothing's original, it's all generative, and we're iterating on things that came before, and it's like I know that, but then there I am sitting there with a frosting bag and graham crackers, and I'm being stubborn because I want to have an original idea. And it's like, come on, like, let's just have some fun here.
Yeah. Well, and even my idea. So I decided to do a graham cracker dollar horse. It was actually really fun.
Your cousin loved
try
that.
Do it.
I showed her a picture.
Oh, did you?
Last night,
That's awesome. But it's not original either, because dollar horses have been made for a long time.
Not out of graham crackers, though.
Not out of graham crackers. I'm sure somebody else has made one.
Yeah.
But I just thought, I'm like, oh, I want to do a dollar horse. I did kind of roll with it in Laura's style, where the legs fell off it.
Like
because
2 times?
2 times the frosting was too much. I was trying to get it even, and it was tippy. And I'm like, you know what? This dollar horse is just going to look like it slipped on like an icy lake on my scene. And so I made it kind of so it was like
the legs were splayed out,
you know, like Bambi on the movie when he's on the ice. But I had fun. But again, that's not original, but it's Laura's version of it.
The way you executed it was very original.
It was fun to execute.
It looked really cool.
If I made like a little ski slope out of marshmallows, and
you made an orange frosting color,
like a red orange, yeah.
Looks just like a dollar horse that we have.
Yeah.
But as you were putting it on, I'm like, oh, it looks just like Pokey from Gumby.
Oh yeah, you really wanted me to make Pokey.
I did. I'm like, just give it a black mane and a black tail. Keep all the dollar horse stuff, but like it'd be so funny. So I'm pretty sure I'm gonna find some googly eyes and put it on there to make it look like Pokey.
I'll come back and all of a sudden,
before we get rid of it.
There you go. That'll be funny. So getting back to this idea about better at being better, how do we do that and not get stuck in perfectionism?
Yeah, because it feels like that could be a trap, especially for me, I bet. Just because like I could maybe get stuck trying to always be better. Not trying to be better isn't the answer. Well, it sounds like a great phrase to have at the beginning of a plan, a beginning of a strategy.
Yeah.
Right? It's like my goal here, my life goal is to continue to be better and to be able to show up better for you, for the kids, etc. Right? All my different circles as they grow and expand. Right? So I think with that, to not fall into perfectionism, I think you need to have a real healthy dose of patience and realize like this is a long game.
Yeah.
The point isn't to get the house built in 4 hours. It's, oh, I have time to build the foundation here. I have time to think about details, but I can also do that as I go. You know, like, so it's like I think there's a real art and a beauty to mixing like our two methods of operation.
Yeah.
Whenever I go a little further in your direction of actively working through something as I'm learning, things progress. Surprise,
Right.
surprise. And when you come my way and you are maybe a little more analytical or like pre-gaming, like having, this is not to say like you're a really good planner. It's just like I'm not always an active participant in it.
Right.
But sometimes when you're shooting from the hip, walls fall down on the gingerbread house, right?
True.
So,
True.
I mean, I think that's fair, right? Like, I'm not
I
trying to
think
say
that's
like,
fair.
oh,
Yeah.
you rush all the time. It's like, no, no, no. When it comes to a project like that, you tend to dive right in, and I tend to sit back.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I think patience and the awareness, like, that's all I'm really talking about is like, okay, how am I behaving? Is it serving me? And what are the outcomes I want? Right. So I mean, honestly, what I just realized we're talking about strategy and like planning. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but that's I think why that resonates with me. Like the getting better at being better. That's like my life goal. How I want to show up and operate. I don't want it to be oppressive. I want it to be a lofty aim that is kind of like a North Star. It's kind of like a compass.
Yeah.
I'm pointing in that direction, and it doesn't mean I'm going to achieve it tomorrow just because I said, well, I want to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, that's a process.
Yeah. I'm thinking a little bit about even our relationship, that idea of trying to be better at being better. I feel like that is something that we've really embraced as a couple. I think marriage isn't always easy,
No.
but I think we're always trying to figure out how can we as a couple be stronger, more reflective, be more understanding, be more patient, better communicators. I mean, we both know it doesn't always work out the way we intend,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But I do think that that idea, that concept, trying to be better at being better, not just do the things because it's what married people do. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think it takes intent
Right?
and empathy to have a relationship that lasts,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
Because it's like we met in our 20s.
We did. Yep.
We're not the same people, right? I
No,
mean,
we're very, very different.
yeah. I'm not the same person. I have a lot of the same characteristics, and some good, some bad.
Same. Same over on
you
this
know.
side.
Um, and with that, how could it not take work to grow and change with the same person?
Yeah.
It's work. Yeah, I don't know how else to say that.
There's also maybe that better at being better idea, having growth mindset is also really important because I think you and I both have that mindset about our relationship that we don't think it's perfect, but we know that we're both committed to growing individually and together. So I wonder if growth mindset, just generally, when we're thinking about how to intentionally work to be better, if that's an important part of it.
Yeah. Uh, I think it's communication too.
Yeah.
And I think this just pairs so closely with patience and empathy. If I don't communicate with you and vice versa, like it's going to be a disaster. Like assuming something, because we change and because we've grown and we've gone through different life experiences together, you've also gone through life experiences apart from me, like your career and your work. Like no matter how much you tell me about it when you come home
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I wasn't there. And so I have to remember, there's just different facets, right? And so the communication is so key as we keep moving towards the next thing.
I agree with you. When we were younger, just freshly married, or even as a couple, there was a lot of things that I wanted to do because everyone else was doing them, or I thought it was the way they should be done.
Yeah, checking boxes because you're supposed to. So like going to college because I'm supposed to, doing X, Y, or Z, whatever life thing.
Yep.
Other people are doing it, keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing, right?
Having big birthday parties for your kid.
Yeah. Spending tens of thousands of dollars on a wedding, let's say.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because everyone else did.
And if it's something you want to do, like I always, if it's something you want to do and it's important to you, no judgment here. It's just, those are things that maybe we have
made decisions based upon external things that were pressuring us to think this is how it's supposed to be.
Right.
So that comes back to getting better at being better. When I think of that and the work that you and I are seeking to do and generate, it's about, okay, how do I make the best plan for me based on me and what is better for my situation?
Right.
And making decisions based on what's going to get me where I want to go, regardless of the external pressures I may feel. It brings up, comparison and status and affiliation and all that stuff. It's like we're drawn to that. Yeah. But how do I make sure that I don't let that lead me astray? And it comes back to, okay, what's my intent? Do you have an example of like one of those things?
So, I mean, one of the big things that I think about is, we bought our house when we were young, probably when we didn't have the financial means to make it fit into a reasonable budget. Right.
But that's one of those things where it's like you grow up, you need to buy a house.
Get married, buy a house, have kids, right? Those things. And so, and I love our house. I think it's it fits us for our lifestyle and what we need. It's cozy. But I think at the time in which we bought it, probably wasn't the best timing, but that pressure.
It strained other parts of our life.
It did. It's a good way to put it.
But having
financial and even relationship wise.
Well, yeah, because it's all connected.
It's all connected.
It's all part of our life. And so if we're stressed out every month about a big bill.
Yep.
And then Laura likes to go out to eat.
Keith's so I can feel connection.
Yeah.
Right.
Keith's going to feel stressed out.
Well, and buying the house before the big housing bubble burst.
Right.
So paying more than it was worth for a decade or more.
Yeah.
That was tough.
Yeah. And then so that brings up and in the moment that just feels so overwhelming and I feel so stupid and I should have known better and all those types of thoughts come in and then you start to downward spiral. I didn't have the tools I have now. Right. And I still get in a spot where I'll downward spiral if something doesn't go right, but I can stop myself and be like, whoa,
take a beat,
do some box breathing, do something
to not catastrophize.
Yeah. Man, you think that you're supposed to go from A to B to C to D and on and on.
Yep.
And then it doesn't work out that way. It's not a great feeling. And so if I had known some of these things that we're talking about and had some of these resources and tools, it would have been I would have maybe been a little more chill and I wouldn't have as much gray in my beard as I do now.
Right. Right. Maybe shifting a little bit. What are some ways that you think that you could use the concept of not racing to the bottom, but really being better at being better? What sort of mechanisms do you think you could put in place to shift into that mindset as you're moving forward and making decisions and going through life?
I think it comes down to making the time to plan and to reflect, like I'm going to do in a little bit here today with a group. It takes work. The shortcuts, looking for the easy way. A lot of times it's not easier, it's actually harder. And so with that too, comes the realizing I can do more than I think, and it's okay if it doesn't work out right away. So finding a way to put in the work. And for me, that's on my calendar, it's Sundays, I tend to set aside an hour. Let's reflect on what did I do this last week, process through what went well, what didn't. It's just, to me, it's a way to get clarity, to actually slow down and sit in life a little.
Yeah.
I tend to flow in maybe not the most mindful way sometimes, even though I'm very in my head. I tend to kind of go from the next thing to the next thing and actually, ironically, checking off the next thing. Okay, the next thing, I have to go here. Okay, the next thing, I have to get up and get child 1 to school. Then I got to get home. I got to make sure child 2 is up and ready for class.
Yeah.
There's a lot of life to live between those moments. And I need to be more focused on giving myself time to process. I have not been writing as much. I haven't been, aside from like the hour on the weekend, 1 hour out of a week, right? I give myself
Yeah.
time to reflect and process and think about where I want to go. And if I quadrupled that and spent 4 hours a week, I would probably get better.
Right.
To bring it back to
Sure.
like kind of what we're talking about. uh, and better in a lot of ways. Better in ways that not just to serve myself, but others.
Right.
Like that's really what I'm talking about. Like when I talk about this, like the point of better isn't for me to accrue more. It's literally showing up in all of the different areas of my life better. Why would I want anything less than that?
Right.
Anyway, what about you? What's going on? You talk.
No, I like what you're saying around making some intentional time for reflection. I think that definitely is something that helps me hone in on how do I do this in a way that is going to best serve me and those that I'm trying to serve. It made me think a little bit about the podcast because that is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to just show up and talk about whatever is on Keith and Laura's mind in the moment. We're always looking for ways to make this conversation better, not just for ourselves, but for others. Because if we came and just talked about, I think I started the episode a little like, are you talking about what's been going on this week from like a personal standpoint? Or do you want me to talk about the kind of that spark of an idea of what we want to dig into? And you kind of said, the personal stuff's a little boring. I mean, I don't think you
I
said
don't
it
know if
in a
I said
mean
that
way,
exactly.
but
Yeah.
I do think it's to a good point though, that we can talk about what we did over the week, what meetings I had, what meetings you had, what child one's up to, what child two's up to, what you and I have done. And sometimes that makes sense for the conversation and maybe people are interested in that, but it can also be going through the motions and we want to provide more than just a way for people to check in on what are Keith and Laura up to.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean that's what I meant. I'm like, we don't need to talk about what we did this week unless it actually pertains to some epiphany or something. Because if people are taking time to listen, it's probably not because they just want to know what we're up to.
Yeah, we are not Kardashians.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I don't need all that.
That pressure?
Yeah, I don't even know. Oh.
So I want to tell you I appreciate that this blog from Seth really kind of spurred your interest and created a spark for you, and that you were willing to share it with me because it's something that I think we try and do, and we've gotten better at it over the years, but not paying attention to it and noticing it and naming it can make that concept of really intentionally trying to work towards that better not occur. And so I'm just grateful that spark for you and that you shared that spark.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for asking me because something like that stands out to me. I save it and then I forget about it kind of.
Yeah.
Like I save it and think I'm going to come back to it. And without your nudge, I don't always go back to things like that. That's something I want to get better at. It's taking all these things, compiling them, and generating something that's more than me. I don't want to just simply regurgitate these things. I want to kind of what we did here. Like, okay, how do I pass this on and share it? Because if anybody goes and reads Seth's blog, they're going to get better. Literally everyone I read, I'm like, I feel like he was reading my mind and is addressing this just to me. If it seems like it's something about making an organization better, I'm like, it's not just about that. Doesn't
Right.
like it can seem like it's about marketing, but it's not. It's about how am I going to talk to my spouse in a more caring way or something. Like there's all these things that that come out of that. And so me getting to share that with you and hopefully some other people, I think it's helpful. I mean, that's helping ideas spread.
Yeah.
But me simply regurgitating what somebody said, I don't think that's not quite as fulfilling. And so this medium is a great way for me to be creative as well as scratch that itch of wanting to connect with you and others. So thanks for asking me questions.
Yeah. Anytime.
All right. Shall we wrap it up?
I think we should. We need to get you to your meeting.
All right. Let's get out of here.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Love you.
I love you.
Yay.